Last week, we talked about guilt, about why setting a personal boundary feels wrong when it's completely right, about the identity, the always available, always showing up, never saying no kind of identity that keeps so many of us stuck in patterns that are costing us more than we realize. And I ended that episode with a challenge. Find one place in your personal life where you feel resentment. Name it, write it down. Do you remember? I hope you did that homework. And if you didn't, it's not too late. That work still matters. But today, we're bringing all of that into a different arena, one where the stakes feel even higher, one where the fear of saying no is louder, the consequences feel more real, and the identity of always being available is even more deeply wired in. We're talking about boundaries at work. And I want to say something right up front before we go anywhere because I think it matters. Saying no at work is not career suicide. Done right, it is a career strategy. The people who advance, who get the opportunities, who build the reputations, who are trusted with the work that actually matters, they are not the people who said yes to everything. They are the people who got intentional about what they said yes to. And those are not the same thing. That's what today is about. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves, those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. Welcome back. This week 4 of Protect the Work, our March series on the systems and boundaries that protect what matters most. We've covered personal systems, career systems, and personal boundaries so far. And today is the piece that ties us all together in our professional lives. Let's get into it. Here is the honest truth about why career boundaries are harder than personal ones for most people. At work, the consequences feel more concrete. Say no to a friend and the relationship might get awkward. Say not to your boss, and in your head at least, the consequences can spiral all the way to being slight-lined, passed over, labeled as difficult, or eventually let go. That fear is not irrational. It's based on real things that have happened to real people in real organizations. The fear of being seen as not a team player, the fear of missing an opportunity because you were not visible enough, the fear that someone less talented but more available will get the thing that you wanted. And underneath all of that is this. Most workplace cultures, availability is still coded as commitment. Being busy is still coded as valuable. And saying no, even as strategically, even thoughtfully, even when it's completely appropriate, can still feel like you're breaking an unspoken rule. So I'm not going to tell you the fear is wrong. I'm going to tell you that operating from that fear, saying yes to everything because the alternative feels too risky, has its own very real consequences. The fear of saying no at work is real, but so is the cost of never saying it. So let's talk about what overgiving at work actually is costing you. When you say yes to everything at work, when you take every project, attend every meeting, absorb every request that lands on your plate, a few things happen. First, your genius zone shrinks. Remember that from last month? The work that only you can do, The work that actually showcases your highest value and drives real results, that work gets crowded out by everything else. You become busy but not necessarily impactful or brilliant. Second, your yes stops meaning something. When you're in every room, your presence in any particular room doesn't signal anything. When you take on every project, your commitment to one specific one gets diluted. You become reliable in a general sense, but not remarkable in any specific one. And third, and this is the one nobody talks about, you start to resent the work, the projects, the meetings, the manager, the organization, not because any of it is wrong, but because you never drew a line. And now you're so far over, it can't see where you end and the job begin. I know that last one because I lived it personally. A few years ago, I stepped into my first VP role. Broad scope, high visibility, a lot of complexity from day to day. I was responsible for multiple functions. The kind of role where context switching isn't occasional. It's like every day, every moment of the day. You finish one conversation about a leadership pipeline and walk directly to another about a team that's breaking down, and then another about a development program, and then another that has nothing to do with any of those things, but somehow landed on your plate anyway. I was barely settled into the role when the world changed. COVID hit. And overnight, everything that worked meant, how it happened, where it happened, what people needed from their organizations, it changed completely. And HR was at the center of all of it. Suddenly, I wasn't just leading the functions I was responsible to, but I was the HR crisis coordinator response across all the teams that had never had to work together at that speed or at that scale, trying to get people aligned on things that were urgent and tactical and constantly shifting, trying to hold together an HR function that was being pulled in 15 different directions by a situation none of us had a playbook for. And everyone needed something from me, everyone, every day. Leaders needed guidance, teams needed direction, my own people needed support. And because I was in the epicenter of the HR response to COVID, I became the person everyone turned to, not always because it was appropriate, but because I was there and I was saying yes. I want to be honest about what that period felt like from the inside, because from the outside, I'm sure it looked like leadership, like someone stepping up in a crisis, like exactly what you would expect of someone in my role, right? But here's what was actually happening. I was constantly reactive, never proactive. Every day was a triage and responding to whatever was loudest, most urgent, most on fire at the moment. That is strategic work that I've been hired to do, the real organizational development, talent architecture, the things that were supposed to be my genius zone, kept getting pushed to the back of the queue that never got shorter. And the coordination work itself was deeply frustrating. I was spending enormous amounts of time trying to get different teams to move together on things that were frankly tactical, things that should have not required my level of involvement, but did, because no one had drawn a clear line about whose job it was to hold it together, so it defaulted to me. And maybe I also raised my hand because I always believe that you need to do the work that it's needed. Looking back, I know that my HR teams were frustrated. I was frustrated, and I had no one to hand any of it because I've never stopped to define what was actually mine to carry and what wasn't. The burnout didn't come all at once. It came in layers. First, it was the loss of creative energy. I'd sit down to work on something that actually required my thinking and realized I was nothing left to give to it. The tank was empty before I even started. Then came the emotional flatness. I stopped feeling proud of the work. I stopped feeling the satisfaction of impact. I was just moving through the days, surviving them. And then the part I really didn't want to admit, I started feeling resentful of the request, of the expectations, of a situation I had walked straight into without ever stopping to ask, what am I actually here to do? And what can I afford to keep saying yes to? From the outside, it looked like I was holding everything together. On the inside, I was eroding. It looked like leadership and it felt like disappearing. Now, the turning point, for me at least, wasn't dramatic. It was a Thursday evening. I pull up my calendar, not to plan anything, just to look at it. And I felt something I can only describe as grief. Not for what was on it, but for what wasn't on that calendar. There was no time that was mine, no uninterrupted blocks where I could actually think, no breathing room between the demands. I had been thinking about energy management, teaching it in my own way, believing in it, and I was not practicing any of it for myself. The gap between what I knew and how I was actually living was the moment I couldn't unsee. If I generally believe energy is a finite resource that has to be protected, then what exactly was I doing? I was giving mine to everything and everyone with no system for what I said yes to, no boundary around what I held, no honest reckoning with what all of it was costing me. That clarity didn't feel good, but it was necessary. You know, those moments where you have this aha moment and it's painful, but at the same time is freeing to now know. I won't pretend I fixed this overnight. The full reckoning came gradually, including eventually making a career change that this experience was part of. But here's what I want you to take from this, because it's the thing that changed how I think about career boundaries entirely. I was not failing because I wasn't capable. I was struggling because I had built a professional identity around never being the one who says no. And that identity, the always available, always stepping up, always in the room, was costing me the very thing that may be valuable in the first place. My clarity, my thinking, my capacity to show up fully for the work that actually mattered. A career boundary isn't about protecting your comfort. It's about protecting your contribution. And when I finally started drawing lines, deciding deliberately what was mine and what wasn't, what deserved my best thinking and what didn't, my actual impact went up, not down. When you stop being everywhere, the places you choose to be part mean something again. A career boundary isn't about doing less. It's about protecting your capacity to do what matters most and doing it fully. Now, why does the guilt loop runs differently at work? We talked about it last week, that guilt loop. Remember about it? If you missed last week's episode, don't worry. You can go back later and listen to that. Last week, I talked about this guilt loop, the pattern of saying yes, feeling resentment, occasionally trying to say no, then getting floated with guilt and going back, round and round. At work, the same loop runs, but the emotion driving it isn't guilt, it's fear. Fear of being seen as difficult, fear of being passed over, fear of being the person who said no when everyone else said yes, and now you're the one who gets left out of the next conversation. And here's the thing about fear. It is an even more powerful override than guilt, because guilt at least involves other people's feelings. Fear is about your survival, and your brain treats professional survival the same way it treats actual survival, by doing whatever it takes to stay safe, which means saying yes, always, to everything. The loop looks like this. A request comes in, a project, a meeting, a scope expansion, something that is not really yours but somehow ended on your plate. The fear says yes before you've even had a chance to think about whether yes is the right answer. You take it on. The resentment starts quietly. You deliver, maybe fully, maybe stretch thin, but you deliver. Time passes, another request comes in, and that capacity you were already running low on gets thinner. And eventually something suffers. Your best work, your focus, your health, your presence at home. That is the real career risk. Not the no you were afraid to say, the slow erosion of the quality you bring to the yeses you actually count. The fear of saying no at work feels like self-protection, but it's actually the thing putting your best work at risk. There are 4 career situations where the fear loop tends to run hardest, where the cost of not having a boundary is highest, and the skill of holding one matters most. Let's go over them. The first one, scope creep. The project that keeps expanding. The role that keeps absorbing things that used to belong to someone else. The invisible accumulation of responsibilities that never got officially added to your job description but somehow became your anyways. The second one, the meeting culture. The calendar that fills up with other people's priorities before you had a chance to protect your own. The invites you out to accept because declining feels like opting out, when really you've been opting into your actual work. The third, managing up. The conversations with your boss or senior leaders where you need to push back, set an expectation, or say this isn't working, and everything in you wants to just agree and figure it out later. And the fourth one, visibility without overextension. This is the tension between being seen and being spread too thin, between raising your hand and over raising your hand until you say yes is worth nothing because it's automatic. What I want to do is to give you a script for each of these situations, because language matters. And knowing what to say, having thought it through before you're in the moment, is the difference between holding the line and caving because you didn't know how to say no and still sound like a team player. So let's go over those scripts. And before we go there, let me say this. The same principle from last week applies here. Be clear, kind no is complete. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to apologize. And you don't need to say yes and figure out later how you manage the fallout. Clear? So again, these scripts are not about being difficult. They are about being deliberate. And deliberate in a workplace that rewards a reactive availability is actually one of the most strategic things you can be. The first one is when your scope keeps expanding. Remember? This is what you can say. I want to make sure I'm adding the right level of value here. Taking this on would mean deprioritizing whatever specific thing, which I don't think serves the broader goal. Can we talk about the trade-offs before I commit? See, this script does something most people miss. It names the trade-off. You're not just saying no, you're showing that you're thinking about organizational priorities, not just protecting your time. That's a strategic, not being difficult. It also opens a conversation instead of closing the conversation. The second case where you need to decline a meeting. Here's a script. And like last week, check the show notes of today's episode because I have all the scripts written down for you. So you can use them. Again, use your own words. These are just a basis, right? An inspiration. You need to read them and then put your own words to it. but I want to give you kind of the how-to, right, formula on how to do some of these that can help you protect your boundaries better. So the second one, when you need to decline a meeting, this is what you can say. I want to make sure I'm in the rooms where I'm adding a specific value. Based on the agenda, I don't think my attendance in this is the highest priority or the best use of my time. I'm happy to review materials and weigh in at key decision points. The key phrase is highest use of my time. You're not saying the meeting isn't important. You're signaling that you think carefully about where your presence creates value, which is exactly what senior leaders do. This script positioned correctly actually raises how you're perceived, not lowers it. And you're still saying, I'm happy to weigh in at key decision points. Okay, the third one, when you need to push back, managing up. Here's the script. I want to be honest with you. I have some concerns about this approach. I'd like 5 minutes to walk you through what I'm seeing before we move forward. I think it matters. It's short, to the point, kind, but opens a conversation. This one takes the most courage because the power dynamic is real. But the leaders who get trusted with harder things are the ones who speak up early, not the ones who execute without questioning and surface problems later. Saying, I think it matters, it's not insubordination, it's professional judgment. And that's the reason why they hire you. Okay, the fourth one, when you're being pulled into something outside your lane. Here's the script. This only feels like it sits closer to, say, the name of the person or the function you believe it belongs with. I want to be helpful here, but I also don't want to create confusion about ownership. Can we make sure the right person is looped in before I go further? See, this script protects two things, your time and the actual quality of the outcome. Work that lands with the wrong person rarely gets the best result. You're not deflecting. You're being responsible for about whose expertise this actually needs. The fifth situation, when you're protecting your deep work time. This is what I would say. I keep that time blocked for focus work. It's when I do my best thinking I can make, suggest an alternative time, work. Does that work for you? Short, no apology, no elaborate explanation of your system. You're not asking for permission to have a priority. You're communicating it clear and offering an alternative, a solution. That's how senior leaders talk about their time. Let's start talking about yours the same way. Okay, time to pull it all together. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Setting a career boundary is not about doing less. It's not about being difficult or disengaged or suddenly too good for the work. It is about doing the right things, the things that are actually in your lane, actually in your genius zone, actually moving your career and your organization forward. Your capacity is finite. Your attention is finite. Your best thinking has a limit, and every yes that doesn't deserve your best is taking it from a yes that does. You know, I always like to say, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and vice versa. So you really need to be careful with what you're saying yes to. The people who build the careers they actually want are not the ones who never said no. They're the ones who learn to say no in a way that still sounded like leadership, like strategic thinking, like someone who knows exactly what she's here to do and protects that space to do it well. That is not a personality type. It is a skill. And like every skill, you get better at it every time you use it. So here's your challenge for this week. Identify one place at work where you're consistently overextending. A meeting you attend but rarely contribute to, or a scope that grown beyond what's actually yours, or a request you keep absorbing because it's easier than having the conversation. Name it, and then choose one script from today and use it. Not when the moment is perfect, not when you've rehearsed it 10 times, but this week, in the moment that you're already in. You will feel the fear, and that's normal. Feel it and say the thing anyway. That is what building a career boundary actually looks like from the inside. As always, I want to invite you to come find me on Instagram at Leading Yourself Podcast and tell me which script you use. I mean it. I want to know the boundary you set this week, no matter how small it felt, is worth naming it out loud. If you're not subscribed to the Monday Brew yet, my free weekly newsletter every Monday morning, the link is also on the show notes of today's podcast episode. Connect with me also on LinkedIn because I share a lot about career development and intentional leadership over there, and I would love to have you in the conversation. Next week is Integration Week. It's how all of this works together to protect what matters most: your energy, your clarity, your career, and your life outside of it. It brings everything together: systems and boundary, personal and professional, the full integration. Here is where you and I are going to have a coaching session, and also I'm going to be answering all your questions. So as always, if you have any questions about anything that we talked about this month, now is the time to submit them. I'm going to put the form to submit the questions again on the show notes of today's podcast episode. It's a good one to end the month. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss it. I'll see you then. Have an amazing week ahead. Okay, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But before you go, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if we're not already friends on Instagram, let's get connected. You can find me as Leading Yourself Podcast. Number 2, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am incredibly grateful that you're in this journey with me. I want to leave you with one last thought. I want to remind you that you're destined for more and that every step that you take brings you closer to becoming that best version of yourself. Embrace each day as a chance to learn, grow, and chase your dreams. The world needs you to shine brightly, so go out and show up fully and authentically. Take care, and I'll see you next time.